Very simply put, an addiction can be a repeat of any movement, any behaviour, any pattern over and over again, but that repeat of behaviour is actually a coping strategy. Yeah, the repeat of behaviour is a coping strategy to help you numb out, help you avoid, help you to delay the life lessons that are being presented to you. For example, if you find when you go into work, there is a series of life lessons that are presented to you. There might be conflict with colleagues, there might be time pressure with deadlines with work, there might be critique and criticism and feedback that is coming, and there could be so many things that are going on in the workplace with dynamics and relationship challenges, etc. They're just a few examples of some of the life lessons that are in the classroom of life. And they can feel challenging, they can feel overwhelming, and they can feel tense in the body. And if we don't feel equipped to deal with what those life lessons are, and we're pretending that they're not there, and we're kind of just putting up with them and just going, oh, well, that's just life, then you need to find a way to medicate yourself, to numb the angst, to numb the anxiety, to numb the way the body feels when all of those barrages of life lessons are presented to you. So when you're approaching life from that perspective, that life feels like a barrage of life lessons, it can feel daunting. And so when we come home from work, we look for a way to numb out that feeling. So we might plonk in front of the TV. And that TV then becomes a way that numbs out the overwhelm of what we've felt during our day. Or we might overeat, or we might have a substance of some sort, whether that be alcohol or cigarettes or ice cream or whatever it might be. But all of those are examples of behaviours that are used to help you numb out or cope with life. An addiction is when we start repeating those same patterns as a way of medicating how we feel about life. So it's the repetition of familiar behavioural patterns that are used as a coping mechanism of how you're actually dealing, managing, basically relieving yourselves from the symptoms of the classroom of life. The simple answer to who does the addiction impact is everyone. However, we live in a society where we've put addiction on a spectrum. And we've got addiction up here where I would classify as a higher intensity in addiction, and we've got ones down here where there are repeated familiar patterns, but they're not actually classified as addiction in today's society. So up at this end of the spectrum, we've got things like alcohol addiction or drug addiction and other gambling addictions and addictive behaviours that society has classified and society has said that is addictive behaviour. But has anybody put over-exercising as an addictive behaviour? Or has anybody put watching TV as an addictive behaviour? Or have we put overeating as an addictive behaviour? That's where we've got to understand that addictive behaviour is actually a spectrum. And there's ones that society considers to be addiction. We've got the gaming behaviours that is now becoming more of a trend and something that's more spoken about as an addictive behaviour. So we've got gambling, we've got gaming, we've got alcohol, we've got drugs, we've got other behaviours that society classifies and considers and is willing to acknowledge as addiction. But these other ones on the spectrum are ones that we also need to start to be aware of. Because if we just take the higher intensity addictive behaviours that society has classified as addiction, then we wouldn't say that everyone has addiction. But if we consider it to be a spectrum, I will pretty much guarantee that every single person has at some point had in their repertoire a pattern of behaviour that is repeated, that they are using as a coping strategy to help them manage life. Then we would be able to say that each and every one of us has somewhere in our life had some patterns of addictive behaviour. if we look at addiction being as a way of managing and coping with life, and people live in a way where they celebrate management, then people would classify addiction to be a good thing, so to speak. And there will be addiction behaviours that people will go, well, that behaviour is much better than another. For example, if you were to go to a drug and alcohol rehab centre, the person has entered as a result of the addiction of using drugs and alcohol as a way of coping with life. And when you walk through those centres, you will see that there is a lot of coffee drinking, there is a lot of sugar taking, lollies are suddenly super, super popular, and equally in some centres, although this is now not as much due to government regulations, but smoking is very high. So you may have stopped the addictive behaviour of drinking alcohol and taking drugs, but now you've started the behaviour of increased sugar taking, increased caffeine taking, and on some occasions increased nicotine. But society might celebrate that and go, great, they've stopped the drugs and alcohol. But has the addiction gone? No. But people might celebrate that and say, but it's better. It's a much better addiction than what the other one was. So society might say, well, that addiction is now better, or it's a good addiction. From my perspective, I would say the addictive pattern has not gone. It's simply shifted from one form of drug and alcohol taking to a different form of sugar, caffeine, and nicotine as a new form of addiction. So in simple answer, if there's any time a person is using a frequent, repetitive sequence of behaviours as a way of managing life, then it would be classed as an addiction. And to me, any time we're about managing life, it is not actually truly going to support the long-term development and lasting behaviour change for any person. So for me, an addiction is never good.
Some people may say that they're addicted to work, and you hear the term workaholic, but someone else may be very dedicated to work and work very long hours. How do you differentiate between what is an addiction and what is dedication?
Great question. So in the example of the difference between somebody dedicated to work and that's a workaholic, and you could apply that in many different situations, somebody who's addicted to sport or somebody that does recreational sport, and same with music or same with art or same with any part of that person's life. We need to look at the person's whole life, not just part of their life. So if we've got somebody who is considered a workaholic, my question would be, is what's the quality of their relationships? What's the quality of how they are with their family? What's the quality of the rest of their life? What's the quality of how they treat themselves in that process? And if each of them, work, family, relationship, etc., if each of the parts of a person's life has an equal quality brought throughout the whole parts of that person's life, then I would consider that that's not an addiction. But if somebody's coming into work and they bring a huge amount of effort, a huge amount of focus to that particular workplace, yet their relationships are basically down the gurgler, I would say that the work is being used as a medication, as a scapegoat, to be able to avoid dealing with the life lessons that are being presented to you in the other elements of your life. Because workaholic in the term brings up a good point. But a lot of people in life bring a lot of focus to the areas of life that they've already developed. And by that, they're actually controlling life because they're avoiding bringing a focus to the other parts of the classroom of life that they've not yet developed. So when it's not an addiction, an equal focus and equal quality is brought to all parts of life, and life is not separated into segments. So a person dedicated to work, not classed as the workaholic, a person dedicated to work is equally dedicated to their family, is equally dedicated to their relationship, is equally dedicated to their own well-being, is equally dedicated to all parts of their life. So life is not segmented, life becomes one.